Farmers are so concerned about their farm finances right now, they really just can't catch a break. It's not just because corn prices are below break even for most, it's the fact input prices are so high.
The U.S. has lost the corn crown. We've been the world's top exporter of corn for just about every single year in history.
China halted orders for U.S. soybeans and corn before tariff escalation. A crushing blow. USDA cancels local food purchasing programs that serve Humboldt's schools, tribes, seniors, and food bank while supporting ranchers and farmers. Have you heard that China just turned away 1.5 million metric tons of American corn? Do you know why U.S. farmers are watching their silos overflow? And did you see that Canada's corn exports are set to hit 2.5 million metric tons this season, thanks to billion-dollar deals in Japan and South Korea? Welcome to 2025, where old rivals become the new winners in the global corn race. First, picture this. The United States, once the world's top corn exporter, 54.2 million metric tons in 2023-24, now faces a shrinking market. In early 2025, China canceled a massive 1.5 million ton order, pointing to quality concerns and hitting back with retaliatory tariffs. At the same time, low water levels on the Mississippi River slowed barges by 20%, adding 30 cents per bushel in shipping costs. The result? U.S. corn prices plunged to about $3.50 per bushel, down from $6.50 in 2024, while a surplus of 2.5 billion bushels piled up in grain elevators from Iowa to Illinois. As American farmers grapple with unsold stock, some forced to sell tractors and harvesters just to cover bills, Canada quietly seized the moment. In 2024/25, Canadian corn exports are projected at 2.5 million metric tons, up from 1.5 million the year before. Deals with Japan alone account for 800,000 tons, while South Korea snapped up 600,000 tons. None of this is by accident. Canada's use of blockchain traceability now covers 30% of its corn shipments, giving buyers real-time proof of quality and origin. Add a non-GMO premium. 25% of Canada's corn is GMO-free, and you have a winning recipe for markets that demand both consistency and purity. Behind these shifts lie powerful government supports. Canadian farmers benefit from agri-insurance and agri-stability, covering up to 90% of export losses, plus export credit insurance that backs deals worth hundreds of millions. By contrast, U.S. exporters face a 10% blanket tariff on imports, 50% on steel and aluminum, that drive up equipment and fertilizer costs by 15%, and 25% retaliatory duties from key buyers like China. The playing field is anything but level. Rural America feels the pain. Net farm income in the Corn Belt has fallen 30%, shrinking from $150 billion in 2024 to $105 billion this year. In Kansas, the local grain co-op reports 36% more unmatched corn in storage, and in Nebraska, 25% of farms sold equipment to make ends meet. Food aid applications in farming counties are up 40%, as families who once fed the world now struggle to feed themselves. Still, Canada's rail and port network boasts a 95% on-time delivery rate, compared to the U.S. at 80%. Japanese millers praise the zero-delay shipments to Yokohama, while U.S. corn sits in backlog at New Orleans, redirected or held for days. Even billion-dollar contracts with Middle Eastern feed mills now favor Canada, citing supply chain stability over a few dollars saved. This isn't just about corn. It's a warning that policy missteps, tariffs, GMO restrictions, and outdated infrastructure can open doors for competitors. If U.S. farmers don't see swift reforms, Canada and Brazil stand ready to lock up the world's barns. America's Corn Belt, once the envy of every market, now faces an uncertain harvest. Before we dive back in, please hit the like button. Your support fuels every story we share. We're aiming for 5,000 subscribers on Global Insight, and your subscription would mean the world to us. Thank you for helping us grow. Now let's continue. Across the Western Hemisphere, America's corn woes deepen. Mexico, once a staunch U.S. customer, cut its American corn imports by 15% in 2024-25, down to 18 million tons, after enforcing strict new GMO restrictions. Mexican millers, seeking non-GMO options, turned to Canada's traceable, GMO-free corn for tortilla and snack production. Even trucks lined up at Laredo carry Canadian grain northward, a reversal that was unthinkable just 2 years ago. Further south, Brazil has risen as a powerhouse. In 2022-23, Brazilian corn exports topped 56 million tons, overtaking the U.S.'s 41.3 million tons. By mid-2025, Brazil aims for a record 60 million tons, leveraging lower production costs and expanding acreage. Their competitive edge came from abundant rainfall and a weaker real, making their corn 10 to 15% cheaper on the world market. As U.S. prices hovered near $3.50 per bushel, Brazilian bids undercut by 30 cents to 50 cents, prompting importers in Africa and the Middle East to diversify away from America. In Europe, corn is less central than wheat, but France's production decline, down 20% in 2024, created openings that Canada sprinted into. French feed mills in Normandy contracted Canadian corn, citing reliable supplies rather than risk late barge traffic on the Seine. U.S. exporters, hamstrung by Mississippi droughts, lost ground because barges transported 20% fewer loads this year, causing delays up to 2 weeks. Each delayed shipment cost shippers an extra 25 cents per bushel, eroding profitability. Global corn trade in 2024-25 fell by 9%, the largest drop in decades, from 207.3 million to 190.5 million tons. U.S. share shrank from 26% to 23%, while Canada edged up to 3% from 2% previously. China's retreat was the most dramatic. After canceling 1.5 million tons, their annual imports plummeted to under 5 million tons, the lowest since 2018. They now rely on Brazil's 18 million tons and Canada's 2 million to fill the gap. Back home, a cascade of consequences unfolds. In Iowa, ethanol plants that consume 40% of U.S. corn cut production by 10%, idling workers and trimming capacity. Grain elevators raised storage fees by 30%, pushing farmers to pay extra to hold their crop. Illinois cooperatives complain that we're full up, with few buyers at the dock. As spring planting looms, many are debating switching acres to soybeans or sorghum, crops less affected by export bans. Policy missteps magnify these market forces. The 10% blanket tariff on imports and retaliatory duties, China's 25% on corn and Mexico's 10%, make U.S. inputs less competitive. Equipment tariffs on steel and aluminum drove up combine and planter costs by 15%, squeezing farm budgets even before the harvest. Meanwhile, U.S. port infrastructure lags. Only 80% of corn vessels arrive on time versus Canada's 95%, per Transport Canada. In Washington, proposals are emerging. A Corn Competitiveness Act to subsidize non-GMO grain, grants for deepening river channels, and fast-track approvals for grain testing labs at Gulf ports. Critics say these are too little, too late, and urge rolling back blanket tariffs altogether. Without swift action, the Corn Belt risks permanent erosion of its global standing. The tipping point is near. U.S. corn farmers, hurt by canceled orders and rising costs, face an existential choice: adapt fast or risk going under. Across the Corn Belt, communities are rallying to stem the tide. One bright spot shines in Salina, Kansas. Local co-ops, grain elevators, and farmers joined forces to launch a Heartland Export Initiative. They pooled resources to charter barges down a newly dredged stretch of the Republican River, cutting transit times by 2 days. Within a month, Canadian and Brazilian buyers took notice and booked 200,000 tons of Salina corn, proof that nimble logistics and local cooperation can turn the tide. Meanwhile, Washington is under pressure to act. Senators from Iowa and Illinois introduced the Corn Recovery Act, proposing emergency export subsidies of 10 cents per bushel for U.S. corn bound overseas, capped at 500 million bushels. The bill also calls for $500 million in federal grants to modernize on-farm grain elevators and deepen key river channels. Critics warn that subsidies mask deeper problems, but farmers argue any relief beats leaving fields unpicked. At the USDA, talks are underway to create a non-GMO incentive program, matching Canada's 25% GMO-free success. Under this plan, U.S. growers could receive $20 per acre to plant non-GMO varieties, reclaiming markets sensitive to genetic standards. Early tests in Nebraska reported a 10% premium on those kernels. If scaled region-wide, this shift could recapture up to 5 million tons of lost demand by 2026. On the tech front, drone-based pesticide application pilots, proven 90% accurate in Saskatchewan, are being trialed in Iowa, thanks to a $50 million Department of Ag grant. The goal: slash glyphosate and residue levels to below Japan's 50 parts per billion limit, matching Canada's clean farm transition success. If U.S. corn meets these strict standards, buyers in Asia may reconsider America's grain, once their first choice. Yet none of these efforts erase the hard truth. Blanket tariffs and policy missteps cost U.S. farmers market share they may never fully regain. As Brazil and Canada lock in multi-year deals, American corn risks being the world's second-best option, available but not preferred. That shift undermines livelihoods in small towns where equipment sales, feed mill jobs, and farm store revenue vanish with every lost shipment. Still, hope remains in community resilience. In Iowa City, a farmers market now hosts weekly Buy Local Corn Days, inviting chefs and consumers to sample fresh off-the-field corn roasted on site. The message: support your local grower, or watch them disappear. These grassroots campaigns, while small, send a powerful signal. American corn lives or dies by the loyalty of its own people as much as by global markets. If you've watched how global shifts and trade policies are rocking our fields, click the video on your screen now. No more food, Walmart replied to Trump's tariffs by leaving America, to see how America's biggest retailer reacts when trade wars hit home. Don't miss it. Tap that video and stay informed.